Chapter 15. What is Black Consciousness? Extract from Steve's evidence in the SASO/BPC trial given in the first week of May 1976. In the trial extracts printed in this book, the defense lawyer is Advocate David Sagat, Assistant Counsel for Defense. Cross-examination for the prosecution is by Mr. L. Atwell, Assistant Counsel for Prosecution. The trial judge was Judge Boshoff. The event leading to this trial had been the pro-Frelimo rally at Corey's Fountain, Durban in September 1974, planned by elements of BPC and SASO to celebrate the recognition of Frelimo as the de facto government of Mozambique. Despite the fact that the South African government had itself recognized Frelimo when this rally was announced, and a white businessman publicly declared that if it took place, he and others would go and break it up. Instead of dealing with the white businessman, the Minister of Justice banned the rally. At the same time, a rally organized by Portuguese in Johannesburg to protest against Frelimo was allowed to take place without any official hindrance. The banning of the Corey's Fountain rally was followed by the arrest of black consciousness leaders in Durban and all over the country, and their detention without trial and incommunicado for many months in Pretoria. Eventually, charges were formulated against 13 of those detained, though 4 were subsequently discharged either before the trial began or early in its course. The two most closely associated with Steve himself were Aubrey Mokoape and Strini Moodley. The all-embracing terms in which the indictment was framed made it clear that what was on trial was the black consciousness movement itself. In fact, this trial may be said to have been for this moment what the famous treason trial was for the Congress Alliance of the 1950s. The trial dragged on through most of 1975 and all of 1976, and ended with all 9 being found guilty of one or more charges under the Terrorism Act, which meant a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years. Some have sentences of 6 years. All are now on Robben Island. The last section of this chapter, the importance of language, which is separate from the rest of the chapter, is included first as an example of Steve's conduct under hostile cross-examination, and secondly for his perceptive understanding of the difference between black and white uses of language. The incident referred to concerned Mr. Ntuli Shizi, then organizer of BPC, confronting a white railway worker who was molesting black women on Germiston Station. He was, according to eyewitnesses, pushed onto the railway line by the worker and killed by the oncoming train. Sagat. Now I think that brings us to the 1971 second GSC. Footnote. GSC stands for General Students Council. End of footnote. Biko. Yes. Sagat. Now I do not propose to take you through the whole of that in any way. I merely want to refer you to certain aspects of the resolutions passed at that GSC. If you look at paragraph 1, SASO is a black student organization. Have you got that? Biko. Yes. Sagat. Would you just read that, please? Paragraph 1. Biko. SASO is a black student organization working for the liberation of the black man, first from the psychological oppression by themselves through inferiority complex, and secondly from the physical one accruing out of living in a white racist society. Sagat. Now the concept of black consciousness, does that link up in any way with what you have just read? Biko. Yes, it does. Sagat. Would you explain briefly to his lordship that link-up? Biko. I think basically black consciousness refers itself to the black man and to his situation, and I think the black man is subjected to 2 forces in this country. He is first of all oppressed by an external world through institutionalized machinery, through laws that restrict him from doing certain things, through heavy work conditions, through poor pay, through very difficult living conditions, through poor education. These are all external to him. And secondly, and this we regard as the most important, the black man in himself has developed a certain state of alienation. He rejects himself, precisely because he attaches the meaning white to all that is good. In other words, he associates good and he equates good with white. This arises out of his living and it arises out of his development from childhood. When you go to school, for instance, your school is not the same as the white school, and ipso facto, the conclusion you reached is that the education you get there cannot be the same as what the white kids get at school. The black kids normally have got shabby uniforms, if any, or no uniform at school. The white kids always have uniforms. You find, for instance, even the organization of sport. These are things you notice as a kid. At white schools, to be absolutely so thorough and indicative of good training, good upbringing. You could get in a school 15 rugby teams. We could get from our school 3 rugby teams. Each of these 15 white teams has got uniforms for each particular kid who plays. We have got to share the uniform amongst our 3 teams. Now this is part of the roots of self-negation, which our kids get even as they grow up. The homes are different. The streets are different. The lighting is different. So you tend to begin to feel that there is something incomplete in your humanity, and that completeness goes with whiteness. This is carried through to adulthood, when the black man has got to live and work. Sagat, how do you see it carried through to adulthood? Can you give us examples there? Biko, from adulthood? Sagat, yes. Biko, I would remember specifically one example that touched me, talking to an Indian worker in Durban who was driving a van for a dry cleaner firm. He was describing to me his average day, how he lives, and the way he put it to me was that I no more work in order to live. I live in order to work. And when he went on to elaborate, I could see the truth of the statement. He describes how he has to wake up at 4 o'clock, half past 4, in order to walk a long distance to be in time for a bus to town. He works there for a whole day. So many calls are thrown his way by his boss, at the end of the day he has to travel the same route, arrive at home half past 8, 9 o'clock, too tired to do anything but to sleep in order to be in time for work again the next day. Sagat, to what extent would you say that this example is typical or atypical of a black worker living in an urban area? Biko, with I think some variance in terms of the times and so on, and the work situation, this is a pretty typical example, precisely because townships are placed long distances away from the working areas where black people work, and the transport conditions are appalling. Trains are overcrowded all the time. Taxis that they use are overcrowded. The whole traveling situation is dangerous, and by the time a guy gets to work, he has really been through a mill. He gets to work. There's no peace either at work. His boss sits on him to eke out of him even the last effort in order to boost up production. This is the common experience of the black man. When he gets back from work, through the same process of traveling conditions, he can only take out his anger on his family, which is the last defense that he has. Sagat, are there any other factors which you would name in order to suggest that, to explain why there is this sense of inferiority as perceived by your people? Biko, I would speak. I think I have spoken a bit on education, but I think I must elaborate a little bit on that. As a black student again, you are exposed to competition with white students in fields in which you are completely inadequate. We come from a background which is essentially peasant and worker. We do not have any form of daily contact with a highly technological society. We are foreigners in that field. when you have got to write an essay as a black child under, for instance, JMB. Footnote: JMB stands for Joint Matriculation Board, the governing body for secondary education. End of footnote. The topics that are given there tally very well with white experience, but you, as a black student writing the same essay, have got to grapple with something which is foreign to you. Not only foreign, but superior in a sense, because of the ability of the white culture to solve so many problems in the sphere of medicine, various spheres. You tend to look at it as a superior culture than yours. You tend to despise the worker culture, and this inculcates in the black man a sense of self-hatred, which I think is an important determining factor in his dealings with himself and his life. And of course, to accommodate the existing problems, the black man develops a two-faced attitude. I can quote a typical example. I had a man working in one of our projects in the Eastern Cape on electricity. He was installing electricity, a white man with a black assistant. He had to be above the ceiling, and the black man was under the ceiling, and they were working together, pushing up wires and sending the rods in, which the wires are, and so on. And all the time there was insult, insult, insult from the white man. Push this, you fool, that sort of talk. And of course, this touched me. I know the white man very well. He speaks very well to me. So at tea time, we invite them to tea. I ask him, "Why do you speak like this to this man?" And he says to me in front of the guy, "This is the only language he understands. He is a lazy bugger." And the black man smiled. I asked him if it was true, and he says, "No, I'm used to him." Then I was sick. I thought for a moment, I do not understand black society. After some 2 hours, I came back to this guy. I said to him, "Do you really mean it?" The man changed. He became very bitter. He was telling me how he wants to leave any moment, but what can he do? He does not have any skills. He has got no assurance of another job. His job is to him some form of security. He has got no reserves. If he does not work today, he cannot live tomorrow. He has got to work. He has got to take it. And if he has got to take, he dare not show any form of what is called cheek to his boss. Now this, I think, epitomizes the two-faced attitude of the black man to this whole question of existence in this country. Sagat. The use of the word black in literature and as part of Western culture, has that figured at all? Biko. Sorry? Sagat. The use of the word black. What does black signify and how is it used in language? Judge Boshoff. Is it a comprehensive term? Biko. If I understand you correctly, the reference I think of common literature to the term black is normally in association also with negative aspects. In other words, you speak of the black market. You speak of the black sheep of the family. You speak of, anything which is supposed to be bad is also considered to be black. Sagat. We have got that. Now, in that context, court intervenes. Judge Barshoff. Now the word black there, it has nothing to do with the black man. Isn't that just idiom over the years because darkness, usually the night, was a mystery for the primitive man? I mean, I include the whites when I talk about primitive man, and when he talks about dark forces, he refers to forces that he cannot explain, and he refers to magic, black magic. Isn't that the reason for this? Biko. This is certainly the reason, but I think there has been created through history and through common reference all the attitudes which are associated with exactly that kind of association. Also go in regard to the black man, and the black man sees this as being said of magic, of the black market, precisely because, like him, it is an inferior thing, it is an unwanted thing, it is a rejected thing by society, and of course, typically, and again in the face of this logic, whiteness goes with angels, goes with, God, beauty, you know. I think this tends to help in creating this kind of feeling of self-censure within the black man. Sagat, when you have phrases such as black is beautiful, now would that sort of phrase fit in with the black consciousness approach? Biko, yes it does. Sagat, what is the idea of such a slogan? Biko, I think that slogan has been meant to serve, and I think is serving a very important aspect of our attempt to get at humanity. You are challenging the very deep roots of the black man's belief about himself. When you say black is beautiful, what in fact you are saying to him is, man, you are okay as you are. Begin to look upon yourself as a human being. Now, in African life especially, it also has certain connotations. It is the connotations on the way women prepare themselves for viewing by society. In other words, the way they dream, the way they make up, and so on, which tends to be a negation of their true state, in a sense, a running away from their color. They use lightening creams, they use straightening devices for their hair, and so on. They sort of believe, I think, that their natural state, which is a black state, is not synonymous with beauty, and beauty can only be approximated by them if the skin is made as light as possible, and the lips are made as red as possible, and their nails are made as pink as possible, and so on. So, in a sense, the term black is beautiful challenges exactly that belief, which makes someone negate himself. Judge Barshoff, Mr. Biko, why do you people then pick on the word black? I mean, black is really an innocent reference which has been arrived at over the years, the same as white. Snow is regarded as white, and snow is regarded as the purest form of water, and so it symbolizes purity. So white there has got nothing to do with the white man. Biko, right? Judge Barshoff, but now why do you refer to you people as blacks? Why not brown people? I mean, you people are more brown than black. Biko, in the same way as I think white people are more pink and yellow and pale than white. Judge Barshoff, quite, but now why do you not use the word brown then? Biko, no, I think really, historically, we have been defined as black people. And when we reject the term non-white and take upon ourselves the right to call ourselves what we think we are, we have got available in front of us a whole number of alternatives, starting from natives to Africans to Kafirs to Bantu to non-whites and so on. And we choose this one precisely because we feel it is the most accommodating. Judge Barshoff, yes, but then you put your foot into it. You use black, which really connotes dark forces over the centuries. Biko, this is correct. Precisely because it has been used in that context, our aim is to choose it for reference to us and elevate it to a position where we can look upon ourselves positively. Because no matter whether we choose to be called brown, you are still going to get reference to blacks in an inferior sense in literature and in speeches by white racists or white persons in our society. Judge Barshoff, but would you still refer to black magic if you refer to witchcraft? Biko, oh yes, we do refer to black magic. Barshoff, now do you use it in a good sense or a bad sense? Biko, we do not reject it. We regard it as part of the mystery of our cultural heritage. We feel for ourselves it has not been sufficiently looked into with available scientific approaches as of this moment. Judge Barshoff, but I am not asking you about witchcraft. I am referring to the term. Would you refer to it as black magic? Biko, yes, we do refer to it as black magic. Judge Barshoff, but now why do you use black there? In what sense do you use black? Biko, well, we understand it too when we talk of black magic in this country, unlike in London, for instance, people talk of black magic and it is supposed to be witchcraft, and there is no connotation that it comes from black society. But when you talk of witchcraft, superstition in this country, automatically it is associated with black in the minds of most people. Whites are not superstitious. Whites do not have witches and witch doctors. We are the people who have this. Sagat. I am not so sure he is right there. Judge Barshoff. Yes, we have a lot of witchcraft. Biko. Well, it is certainly not our type of witchcraft, I must say. We have several cases, I am sure. Court intervenes. Judge Barshoff. Well, how many whites go to witch doctors? Biko. You mean to our witch doctors? Barshoff. Yes. Biko. Oh well, this is fine. They go, but the witch doctors and the witchcraft is ours. Judge Barshoff. But you take it amiss. I mean, the fact that the white man blames the witchcraft on the black man, or don't you take it amiss? Biko. Well, in certain instances, yes. I think there tends to be a certain derogatory connotation to reference to blacks as superstitious beings in a certain point of our history, especially during the time of Sir George Grey when he spoke about the suicide of the Xhosas. This is blamed on witchcraft, superstition, and in a sense, Judge Barshoff. But now, does that not cause you people a lot of grief? Witchcraft, I mean? When I go on circuit and I do murder cases near Sekukun land or even near Zanin, we always have witchcraft cases, and they do the most terrible things. When a child dies, they think that somebody must have bewitched the child, and they just kill a few people. Well, you cannot justify that. Biko. No, we do not. We do not accept superstition. We do not accept witchcraft. But all we are saying is that there are certain things within this whole sphere of black magic which can be usefully investigated. I mean, I would reject it as much as you do because I do not believe in it myself, but I do not have disdain for the people who believe in it like most of our society seems to have. I understand my exposure to so much more literature and other, I would say, cultures in the world. So I have decided that there is no place for this in my belief, but the person who believes in it, I can still talk to him with understanding. I do not reject him as a barbarian. Judge Barshoff. But I suppose witchcraft is deprecated by reason of the fact that people do irresponsible things and harm people. Biko. This is correct, yes. Sagat. Is your concern not so much the restructure of the word black in the world of linguistics, so much as to alter the response of black people to their own blackness? Biko. It is certainly directed at man, at the black man. Sagat. And I think you were talking about your understanding of the black man's own sense of inferiority and self-hatred and all that. Biko. Yes. Sagat. In the world of language, how does the black man figure? How does he feel? Biko. Yes, I think this is another area where experiences of, well, let me say difficulties that I have experienced. We have a society here in South Africa which recognizes in the main two languages, English and Afrikaans, as official languages. These are languages that you have to use at school, at university, or in pursuit of any discipline when you are studying as a black man. Unfortunately, the books you read are in English. English is a second language to you. You have probably been taught in a vernacular, especially during these days of Bantu education up to Standard 6. You grapple with the language to JC and Matric. Footnote: JC is Junior Certificate, corresponding roughly to the 11 plus, and Matric, the highest qualification in the secondary education system. End of footnote. And before you conquer it, you must apply it now to learn discipline at university. As a result, you never quite catch everything that is in a book. You certainly understand the paragraph. I am talking about the average man now. I am not talking about exceptional cases. You understand the paragraph, but you are not quite adept at reproducing an argument that was in a particular book, precisely because of your failure to understand certain words in the book. This means you are less articulate as a black man generally, and this makes you more inward looking. You feel things rather than say them. And this applies to Afrikaans as well, much more to English than to Afrikaans. Afrikaans is essentially a language that has developed here, and I think in many instances, in its idiom, it relates much better to African languages. But English is completely foreign, and therefore people find it difficult to move beyond a certain point in their comprehension of the language. Sagat. And how does this relate to the black man, or in particular to black students, as inferiority? Biko. An example of this, for instance, was again during the old days of NUSAS, where students would be something that you as a black man have experienced in your day-to-day life, but your powers of articulation are not as good as theirs. Also, you have amongst the white students a number of students doing MA, doing honors, in particular quarters, highly articulate, very intelligent. You may be intelligent, but not as articulate. You are forced into a subservient role of having to say yes to what they are saying, talking about what you have experienced, which they have not experienced, because you cannot express it so well. This, in a sense, inculcates also in numerous students a sense of inadequacy. You tend to think that it is not just a matter of language. You tend to tie it up also with intelligence in a sense. You tend to feel that this guy is better equipped than you mentally. Judge Barshoff. But why do you say that? Isn't English the official language of SASO? Biko. Yes, it is. Judge Barshoff. Well, now, but your complaint is against the language. But it is just the very language that you are using. Biko. No, no, I'm not complaining against the language. I am merely explaining how language can help in the development of an inferiority complex. I am not complaining against the language. The point in issue is that we have something like 10 languages. We cannot speak all 10 languages at one meeting. We have got to choose a common language. But unfortunately, in the learning process, this is really what happens. You do not grasp enough, and therefore you cannot be articulate enough. And when you play side by side with people who are more articulate than you tend to think that it is because they are more intelligent than you, that they can say these things better than you. Judge Barshoff. But your language is very idiomatic. Well, is it not easier for you people to speak Afrikaans because Afrikaans is like your language? It is very idiomatic? Biko. This is true. Actually, unfortunately, again, Afrikaans has got certain connotations historically that do provoke a rejection from the black man. And these are political connotations. I am not arguing for or against, but they are there. Sagat. But your point, as I understand it, is that the black man feels a little bit of a foreigner in the linguistic field. Biko. Right. Sagat. Is that what you are saying to his lordship? Biko. Yes. Sagat. You are not complaining about the language, just as one does not complain about French when you are in Paris. Biko. That is right. Sagat. But it is something which you have got to master. Is that what you are saying? Biko. That is correct, yes. Sagat. Mr. Biko, still talking about the question of inferiority. You, if I may introduce this point in a certain way, an article, I Write What I Like, by Frank Talk. In Lecture 8 to the Indictment, Fear, an Important Determinant in South African Politics. Who wrote that? Footnote, see Chapter 12. Biko. I wrote that. Judge Barshoff. You say you wrote it? Biko. I wrote it. Judge Barshoff. Is it Lecture 8? Is this by Frank Talk? Biko. That is right. Judge Barshoff. Isn't number 9 Frank Talk? Biko. No, no, he was never Frank Talk. I was Frank Talk. Sagat. My lord, the indictment alleged that he compiled and or wrote it, but in fact, it was never ever suggested that number 9 wrote this. Annexure 9, Focus, Ugandan Asians, and the Lesson for Us. Biko. Yes. Sagat. Who wrote that? Biko. I wrote that. Judge Barshoff. Just let me get that again. Which is that? Sagat. My lord, in Extra 9 on page 11 of I Write What I Like, you say, township life alone makes it a miracle for anyone to live up to adulthood. What do you mean by that? Biko. This refers to the degree of violence that one gets in townships, which tends to introduce a certain measure of uncertainty about what tomorrow will bring. If I am in a different type of life and I spend a night at your place, somehow I feel unexposed to what I would call the elements, you know? I'm not exposed to bad elements of society. When you are in a township, it is dangerous to cross often from one street to the next. And yet, as you grow up, it is essential that kids must be sent on errands in and around the township. They meet up with these problems. Rape and murder are very, very common aspects of our life in the townships. Sagat. And at nighttime, what is the position? Biko. It is especially at nighttime. I mean, in the few days I have spent in Mabopane, where I say, Sagat. That is near Pretoria? Biko. Near Pretoria. I have seen 2 cases of grievous assault. One landed on our door, and there is no relationship between the persons assaulted and the person assaulting. You see an old man being assaulted by a number of young men for apparently no reason whatsoever, except that, of course, possibly it is the end of the month and possibly he might have some money around him. But this does not surprise me. It is a common experience, but I have never learned to accept it all the same, because it is a bitter reminder of the kind of violence that is there in our society. Now, when I use that term there, that it is a miracle to live to an adult age or whatever I said, the precise meaning of it is exactly that one escapes all these possible areas of pitfalls where one might die without any explanation. It is not because you are well kept. It is not because you are well protected. It is just a miracle. It happens. Judge Barshoff. It would be interesting to know what your attitude here is. Isn't that a justification for influx control? Isn't the difficulty that you have a lot of people seeping into such an area, and you find your bad elements amongst those people because it is an uncontrolled element that comes in? To give you an illustration, years ago I was counsel for the black people here when they wanted to move Nuclear Black Township, and at the time I think that 37,000 people were there who were not entitled to be there, that just came into the township, and they were there illegally. Now, isn't that type of thing the cause of this type of crime that you get in a township? Biko. I think, my lord, that if one looks at it superficially, yes, but there is a much more fundamental reason. It is absence of abundant life for the people who live there. With abundant life, you get discipline. People get the things that they want. And because, of course, you do not get a society here which offers this to the people, they have got to introduce measures like influx control. One might say, of course, if you apply influx control laws, you lessen crime. And this, of course, is correct. Judge Barshoff. You see another point. You can continue, but I just want to make this observation now. Usually, influx control ensures that the people who are there in the township have employment. Biko. Right. Judge Barshoff. But now these people who are there illegally, they are people without employment, and they probably have to steal to live. I mean, otherwise, they do not know how to exist. Biko. I do not want to canvass the point of influx control too much. Court intervenes. Judge Barshoff. No, I am just asking you as a matter of interest because I see they make the point here of influx control being one of the reasons why the black man is oppressed. Biko. Yes, because I think the real point about influx control is that if it is necessary, it must be applied equally to everybody. I don't think, it is inconceivable that influx control may be necessary in society, but where it is applied. It has got to be applied without reference to color. It must be applied to everybody. It must not be that a white guy is free to move to Cape Town tomorrow, to Durban tomorrow, and some other place without being indexed, and I have got to go through a whole rigmarole of red tape in order to move from one area to another. Judge Barshoff. But with the white people, you do not have that situation in the sense that usually white people have rather full employment. Is that not so? You cannot say that unfortunately for the black man. So the position is that when black people come into an area where there is already conditions of overcrowding, then you find that crime comes with it. Biko. Equally, my lord, there are large sections of black people who do have full employment where they are going. When I had to be employed in Durban, I had to go through that whole system of influx control. Now, in the first instance, I had a job. I had no competitor. I was wanted. I was going to be assisted in getting a house, but somehow or other it was made difficult for me to move. And in the second instance, and this is part of the complaint about influx control, it is a very degrading system. Judge Barshoff. Well, usually it is the manner of application that usually causes difficulty. Biko. Quite right. You are made in some instances to stand naked in front of some doctors supposed to be running pus off you, because you may be bringing syphilis to the town, he tells you. Now, it is inhuman the way it is done. 3 people are lined up in front of him, all naked, and he has just got to look at all of you. Now, I must feel that I am being treated as an animal, and as you enter the room where this is done in Durban, there is a big notice saying, "Beware, natives in a state of undress." Now, one must feel that it is not just the application of good law. Somehow there seems to be a certain infringement. Calculation, They are trying to put you in your place. I mean, this is the problem. One does not want to argue always against the law as such. Sometimes application counts a lot, and to whom it is applied. If it is applied equally, then fine. Sagat. Whatever the causes, what you are saying is there is an insecurity in one's physical life in the townships. Does this have an effect on the black man in relation to his sense of confidence or inferiority or whatever it is? Biko. You mean the insecurity in the townships? Sagat. The physical insecurity. Biko. Yes, I think it has. I think it contributes to a feeling of, well, it helps to build up the sense of insecurity, which is part of a feeling of incompleteness. You are not a complete human being. You cannot walk out when you like, That sort of feeling, it is an imprisoning concept itself. Sagat. Now, Mr. Biko, I am coming back to the theme of this questioning, namely conscientization. But I just want to divert slightly. Were you ever involved in actually monitoring people, ordinary people's conversations? Biko. Yes. Mr. Sagat intervenes. Sagat. Whether it was in the street or... Biko. You mean some form of research? Sagat. That is correct. Biko. Yes. Sagat. Will you tell his lordship briefly what that was? Biko. My lord, this was a research carried out, I think it was 1972. The purpose was literacy. Now, the particular method we were using places a lot of emphasis on syllabic teaching of people. You do not just teach people the alphabet in isolation. You have to teach them syllables, and you have to start with words that have got a particular meaning to them, what we called generative terms. Now, the preamble to it was some kind of research in a specific area where you are going to work, which carried you to several segments of the community, to particular places where the community congregates and talks freely. Your role there was particularly passive. You are there just to listen to the things that they are talking about, and also to the words that are being used, the themes being important. There we also used pictures to depict the themes that they were talking about. Now, I was involved in this with a man called Jerry Madison and Barney Pityana. Sagat. Was this in Durban? Biko. In Durban. Sagat. Who were you doing this research for? Biko. We were doing it for ourselves. I had been asked to participate in a literary program that was drawn up by SASO. Sagat. Well, whatever this was, you listened to the people? Biko. That is right. Sagat. In what circumstances? Biko. Well, we chose available circumstances. Now, in this particular instance, we listened to women in queues waiting to see a doctor or nurse at a clinic. Some of them had babies on their arms or on their backs. We listened to people congregated in sports fields watching sport. We listened to people in she-beans. I did go around buying beer and a lot of she-beans. And we listened to people in buses as well, and trains. Sagat. What was it that people were saying, if anything at all, about their condition of life? And the white man? If the white man or the white government came up at all? Biko. The first thing to notice when observing such situations is the constant recurrence of what I call protest talk about the situation of oppression that the black man is exposed to. Sometimes it is general, sometimes it is specific, but always contained what I would call a round condemnation of white society, often in very, very tough language, some of which is not admissible in court. I remember, for instance, a specific bus in which I was traveling, and in most instances the topic was dictated by the position of the bus on the way to town. As you are coming out of Umlazi, you pass through a particular area, which is a hostel in fact, called Gliblands. It is a hostel for adult male blacks. Now, there are certain restrictions in hostels, like they may not bring in women and so on. But each time we pass there in the morning, of course, there is a stream of women coming out of the hostel, and people start talking about this. You know, Mr. Biko quotes in a Bantu language, implying that these bachelors have got lots of women. And from there onwards, the theme builds up almost automatically. Why are they disallowed? Where does the white man think these guys are going to get their sex from? That sort of thing. And from there it blows up. And then again, the bus goes through to the industrial area called Jacobs. You pass through the southern part of Jacobs, and there's a constant stream of people getting in and out of factories. And the talk centers around problems of labor and so on. I cannot quite remember specifically what was said, but they start from there again, and always central to this theme is the condemnation of white society in general. You know, when people speak in the townships, they do not talk about the government, they do not talk about the provincial council or city councils, they talk about whites. And of course, the connotation there is with reference to obvious structures, but to them, it is just whites. And as I say, the language is often hard, you know, sometimes to the point of not being admissible in court, because it is swear words, really. Sagat. And you yourself have lived, for example, in Ginsburg location in King Williamstown, is that right? Biko. Yes, I have. Sagat. And is that a rather poor rural location? Biko. Yes, it is a small township of about 1,000 houses, very poor. Zagat. So you are familiar with life there? Biko. That is correct. Sagat. Now the echoing of this sort of sentiment, did that take place there while you lived there? Biko. Oh yes, very common. Sagat. And you people talk of psychological and physical oppression. Is there reference to oppression at all in any shape or form by people in their ordinary thinking? Biko. Yes, often. Sagat. Now, Mr. Biko, when you set out to conscientize people, is that then to bring to them the ideas of black consciousness? Biko. That is correct, yes. Sagat. Can you tell us, when you conscientize people, do you refer at all, do you relate what you say to their condition and the various aspects which you have told his lordship about? The question of starvation and labor and so on? Biko. This is correct. We do make reference to the conditions of the black man and the conditions in which the black man lives. We try to get blacks in conscientization to grapple realistically with their problems, to attempt to find solution to their problems, to develop what one might call an awareness, a physical awareness of their situation, to be able to analyze it and to provide answers for themselves. The purpose behind it really being to provide some kind of hope. I think the central theme about black society is that it has got elements of a defeated society. People often look like they have given up the struggle, like the man who was telling me that he now lives to work. He has given himself to the idea. Now, this sense of defeat is basically what we are fighting against. People must not just give in to the hardship of life. People must develop a hope. People must develop some form of security to be together, to look at their problems, and people must, in this way, build up their humanity. This is the point about conscientization and black consciousness. Sagat, the question I want to put to you is this. Haven't these people got used to and come to accept their what you call existential conditions, their grievances, insecurity, the absence of food or inadequate food, and so on? Biko, that is, I think, understating the position. I think it is possible to adapt to a given hard situation precisely because you have got to live it, and you have got to live with it every day. But adapting does not mean that you forget. You go to the mill every day. It is always unacceptable to you. It has always been unacceptable to you, and it remains so for life. But you adapt in the sense that you cannot continue to live in a state of conflict with yourself. You sort of accept, like the man who was working with the electrician was saying to me, you know, oh, he talks in this way. This is his explanation of it. This is his sort of glib adaptation to it. But deep inside him, he feels it. He cannot keep on answering back to him every day. Don't call me boy. Don't shout at me. Don't swear at me. Because there is also the element of the job that he has got to keep. He has adapted, but he does not forget it. And he does not accept it, which I think is important. Sagat. The other question which is related is, when in a document of BPC or SASO, we will come to BPC later, but take it as an example, you refer to the whites or the white government as oppressors. Does this not alter people's feelings or their attitudes in relation to the white government or the whites? Biko. No, I think it only serves to establish a common basis for discussion. What is contained in that expression is usually what the black man himself normally says about the whole problem in even stronger terms. But when we talk about common problems or the problems that the black man faces, what you are merely doing is to establish a point of departure for what you are talking about, and the goal for BPC or SASO usually is that of a buildup of membership, especially for BPC. The importance of language. Atwell. And this sort of language. Footnote. This refers to a document allegedly circulated at the funeral. End of footnote. Do you consider this as racially inflammable? Biko. No, I think if you put this again, if you put this into Zulu, you would find that this is what any old man, if you pick up an old man from the village and ask him to speak about Nthuli at his funeral and tell him the facts, that he died through being pushed onto the rails, as we believe, by a railway worker at some station, and you tell him that the quarrel started when Nthuli Shizi was protecting the rights of women at the station who had been molested by this man, as we believe, if you ask any old man to go and talk with that kind of background, that is precisely the kind of things he would say. Not necessarily the same words, but words like soldier and so on are going to come in there, and condemnation of that kind of man. That kind of mentality, that is what is being condemned here. Not necessarily that specific man who pushed him, but the kind of society which gives that kind of mentality to a man to make him feel that he can freely push someone onto the rails. You must condemn the entire society because that man is not alone in developing this feeling against blacks. He is rooted in a society which has got a particular history and a particular relationship with blacks. So he feels somehow that it is right when he does this. He might even feel in his own small mind that he is representing his people correctly by pushing this person onto the rails. Now, when we talk about him, therefore, you have got to reflect on the society, and that society is white society. And I think that even an old man would be able to make that assimilation even within black society. Atwell. The point is, these are not in Zulu or any other language. They are in English. Biko. But they are understood by people who are rooted in that sort of culture. Zulu, Xhosa, and so on. No matter what they are expressed in English or Afrikaans or what, but they are understood by people who are rooted in a particular culture. Atwell, would you say this? Biko, they don't sit down to look at one word as such and say, what does it mean? No, they listened to the whole paragraph and understand the combined meaning. They are not analytical with the English. They listen to black words when you are talking. Atwell, is it only English that has this peculiarity of attaching a specific significance to the word? Biko, I don't know other languages. I know a bit of Afrikaans, a bit of English, a bit of Xhosa, Zulu, and all the other languages share one common factor, that of attaching not an analytical but some kind of emotional meaning to situations, whereas English tends to be analytical. You have got to use a precise word, to convey a precise meaning, and I think this is the problem we are having, one of understanding when we look at these documents. Atwell, but isn't that one of the dangers that BPC was faced with, portraying its precise meaning in this language? It shows out of its own free will that it adopted it as its official language. Biko, I am saying both the drawers of this particular piece and the recipients will have no doubt about their communication. You in the middle, who is an Englishman, who looks at words, piecemeal. You may have problems, but the person who drew this up and the person who perceives it within a crowd has no problem. They are at one. They understand what they are talking about. You may not understand it because you are looking at the precise meaning of words. Atwell, are you suggesting that if I were to translate this into Afrikaans word for word literally, that I would not get the same impression that I get from this document? Biko, literally? Literally, word for word, identical to Afrikaans. Biko, well, I don't know. Let us think about Zulu and think about Xhosa. Then I will be an expert there. But certainly I have got a vague impression that even in Afrikaans you would not be able to convey the same meaning if you translate that word for word. Atwell, why did BPC choose this language to convey its meaning? Biko, it is communication with a lot of people who speak several languages, right? But at least they can commonly speak English. Not to any degree of sophistication, but to some degree. Atwell, will they necessarily each interpret this back into their own language to see whether this is Biko? You don't have to interpret it back into your language because your values as a person, whether you speak English or not, your values are affected by your culture. So you're perceiving. You perceive a document in terms of your general makeup, in terms of your understanding, and what I am saying to you is that not one black person looks at this thing in terms of the precise meaning of each word. After this has been read, for instance, if you ask a black person, how are whites described in that document, he will not remember the precise words. He will just have a vague idea. This is all I am trying to say to you. about the meaning of language. Atwell: all right, now he reads that document and all he is left with is a vague or general impression. Biko: of the precise words. The meaning is there. Atwell: what is the meaning of this? Biko: well, Atwell, in BPC J.2, look at J.1 and J.2. Biko: it is a description of white society, specifically of this man in terms of the role which he was playing, right? He stands in the middle. On one hand, he is portraying the rights of women. On the other, he is portraying them against a particularly violent society, okay, which is white society. And what happens is he dies. Now, symbolically, he dies like a soldier. A soldier dies fighting for a cause. His cause was to protect the rights of women. This is basically what the document is saying. No matter what individuals are saying, that is what the man catches that they are talking to. Atwell: I would agree with you that is made here a symbol of the black community and that this white official, whoever he may have been, is made a symbol of the white system. Biko: I have explained why. Atwell: and what impression is the man going to have of the white system who reads this, whether he be a Zulu or a Xhosa or an Indian or anything else? Biko: it is the same old thing, you know. It is again what he knows, okay? Now, at the funeral, the focus, of course, is on the man who is being buried. Now, if you go to any black funeral, the trend is the same. We attempt to bring to light the good facts about the person who is dying. We are paying our last respects to him. Secondly, we talk about how he died. This is, you know, the average conduct of any funeral amongst the blacks. They are just held in that context. The man, who is he? What does he believe in? And so on. What does he stand for? And what caused him to die? We normally say in Xhosa, for instance, there will be a speaker about the life of the person. The witness quotes in Xhosa. There will be a speaker about the sickness of the person. Okay? That is now. Witness again quotes in Xhosa. It is done that in any funeral, so that as a speaker you must find, if I am called upon to speak at somebody's funeral, I must go out of my way to trace his life and bring out what is good in him. So this is quite logical. Besides, it is an African funeral. Atwell: I submit to you that they brought out all the good in Mr. Shezi, whatever good there may have been, and neglected any weak points that he may have had. Biko: this is done. Atwell: and brought out all the evil, nasty, possible things they can say about the whites, and ignored all the good that there may or may not be. Would you agree with me? Biko: I think they have not finished all the evil. Atwell: they have not finished all the evil yet? Biko: no, no. Atwell: would you have gone further than this? Biko: you could have gone further if you wanted to. Atwell: would you have gone further? Biko: who is that? Atwell: you. Biko: not necessarily me, but I am saying somebody could have gone further if he wanted to. If the intention was to try and portray white society as bad and use that to make everybody who was there angry, you could have produced a whole litany of evil if you cared to. This just shows the selflessness of the death, and that someone, in view of the mentality which he has got from a society which has got no respect for black people, killed Shezi. It could have been prevented. That is all that this thing is saying. Atwell: if I understand you correctly, then, that to portray or to cause racial hostility, you consider that one of the possible ways to do so would be to list a whole lot of all the things that the whites do against you. Biko: I said that if really the intention is to cause that kind of feeling to come out to the fore amongst blacks, you can again use the concession of language. You have got to use very colorful language. Take a simple event. not describe it now in concrete terms, but play around the nastiness of the various aspects of the event. You can carry many across to the blacks, and they can become angry. It is thus necessarily enough to make anybody angry in black society. This is really regarded as a description of the circumstances in which the man died. All right, we must blame that guy who pushed him, okay? We have got to. We have got to explain that it is not as if he personally hated Shezi. He is portraying a mentality which he has borrowed from his society. But if one had to make society angry at that funeral, there would be a whole litany of things we can pick up, and we would describe them in precise language, calculated to, bring out the emotion of the black man, would make people angry. It is not difficult to make people angry if you want to. Thus, this was not the intention here. It was purely to describe the circumstances in which the man died. That is all. Atwell: you say it is not difficult to make the black man angry? Biko: if you want to, you have just got to draw up whatever you say in very beautiful floral language. Concentrate on the detail. You can, assuredly. Atwell: what more do you think the man who drew up this document should have done, if that had been his intention? Biko: this is all fair comment on the factual evidence, at least on the factual situation of what happened at the funeral. I mean, at that station, a fair comment. Atwell: you consider this fair comment? Biko: completely fair comment.